Hello and welcome to Tuesday afternoon on the 22nd of June for this week's Tea and Chat. My name is Steph. I normally work in Melksham Library, and it's really great if you can join us this afternoon live, or maybe you're watching later on catch up. Either way, I hope you've got a nice drink. I've got a nice cup of coffee here, so I'll be taking little sips from that throughout as I'm reading poems. It's June at the moment. I might have considered having a summer theme, but it's not particularly summer at the moment. It seems to be going back into pretty autumnal, kind of cold weather in the last few days. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more sunshine and warmth coming forward. But today instead, I'm going to be reading through, because in the last month or so, most of our library branches have received a number of some lovely new poetry books. And two of them that most of the branches have got are these two here. So I've got this one here, which is Poems for Happiness. So that's the one there. And they've also, that's actually a collection of poems, and it's introduced by the Reverend Richard Coles. So it's a nice collection of books for happiness. And the other one is this book, The Poetry Pharmacy, which I believe Basil read a couple of poems from a couple of weeks ago on a previous Tea and Chat. And these are collections of poems that can be helpful for certain times, for prescription for the heart, mind and soul. So there's some really lovely poems in here which can help with all sorts of things. People, if you've got a bit of anxiety, worries, depression, all sorts of things. And there's just a couple of suggested poems which could help lift spirits. So I'm going to start with a very well-known poem. Often printed out, and people have it sometimes hanging in certain rooms of the house as an inspirational poem, and it's called Desiderata, and it's by Max Ehrmann. So this is the first poem for today I'm going to share with you. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter. For always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourselves. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourselves with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labours and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful and strive to be happy. That's Desiderata by Max Ehrmann. Max Ehrmann is an American writer, poet, and he was actually also a practicing attorney. He was actually of German descent. And I think the word desiderata, it comes from the Latin for desire or something that is needed or wanted. And this poem that I've just shared with you is often considered to be something like the desired qualities of the soul and the heart. So you've got peace in your heart and also just kind of some happiness or joy. So moving on, I'm now going to read another very well-known poem from the Poetry Pharmacy book here. It's often voted as one of the UK's favourite poems, so I'm sure you've heard of it. If you might not know it off by heart, but I'm sure you'll recognise it as soon as I start reading it. It's actually by Rudyard Kipling, and it's If. Rudyard Kipling was born in the late 1800s. He was an English journalist and writer, born in India. And as I say, this is one of the UK's favourite poems. It's called If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give up to hating. And yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so to hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can walk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fix the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. And that's If by Rudyard Kipling, and that's one of the poems here in the Poetry Pharmacy. There's all sorts of poems in here. A lot of them are by more recent poets, so unfortunately we can't actually read them out on air because of copyright reasons, but I do recommend that you check this out in your local library. We've got a copy here at Melksham Library. A review on the back from Stephen Fry says this: here is balm for the soul, fire for the belly, an arm around the lonely shoulder, a matchless compound of hug, tonic and kiss. So praise from Stephen Fry for this book of poetry. So it is really lovely, some really lovely poems in there. Do check it out. So I'm going to move back now to reading from Poems from Happiness, and I loved this book. It's in a series of small books of collections of poetry. I have the Poems for Nature myself at home, which I've read from a number of times on these tea and chat sessions. This Poems from Happiness is also just full of lovely poetry that I've really enjoyed reading through, preparing for this today, and finding a number of poems that I've not come across before, and by poets that I've not really come across before. And this one I'm now going to share with you. I find lovely. It's by a British Elizabeth Gould, who's actually a British artist. She produced lots of ornithological works, so lots of drawings and illustrations on birds. And in fact, she was honoured by having two birds named after her: the Gouldian finch, also known as the rainbow finch because it is really rainbow in colour, and also Mrs. Gould's sunbird. But she wrote this lovely poem. It's called Shining Things. Okay, so this is Shining Things by Elizabeth Gould. I love all shining things, the lovely moon, the silver stars at night, gold sun at noon, a glowing rainbow in a stormy sky, or bright clouds hurrying when winds go by. I love the glowworm's elf-light in the lane, and leaves ashine with glistening drops of rain, the glinting wings of bees and butterflies, my purring pussy's green and shining eyes. I love the street lamps shining through the gloom, tall candles lighted in a shadowy room, new tumbled chestnuts from the chestnut tree, and gleaming fairy bubbles blown by me. I love the shining buttons on my coat. I love the bright beads round my mother's throat. I love the coppery flames of red and gold that cheer and comfort me when I'm cold. The beauty of all shining things is yours and mine. It was a lovely thought of God to make things shine. That's Shining Things by Elizabeth Gould. I love the kind of almost like a childhood innocence to this poem, and that kind of childhood excitement and joy, really almost unbridled joy, and she just loves those shiny things. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading that one. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one too. So moving on, I'm going to move to a poem by another American poet, and I've read a couple of his poems before. So Walt Whitman is a poet who wrote a number of quite a broad selection of various poems. Some of them were quite a lot of philosophy and kind of quite spiritual kind of poems. This one I'm going to show you is Miracles, and I've not read this poem before, not seen it before, but I thought I'd share this one with you today. Why? Who makes much of a miracle? As to me, I know of nothing else but miracles. Whether I walk the streets of Manhattan, or dart my sight over the roofs of houses towards the sky, or wade with naked feet along the beach just in the edge of the water, or stand under trees in the woods, or talk by day with anyone I love, or sleep in the bed at night with anyone I love, or sit at table at dinner with the rest, or look at strangers opposite me riding in the car, or watch honeybees busy around the hive of a summer forenoon, or animals feeding in the fields, or birds, or the wonderfulness of insects in the air, or the wonderfulness of the sundown, or of stars shining so quiet and bright, or the exquisite delicate thin curve of the new moon in the spring. These with the rest, one and all, are to me miracles, the whole referring, yet each distinct and in its place. To me, every hour of the light and dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same. Every foot of the interior swarms with the same. To me, the fish is a continual miracle. The fishes that swim, the rocks, the motion of the waves, the ships with men in them. What stranger miracles are there? That was Miracles by Walt Whitman. And again, this is such a joyful poem, I find. A bit like Shining Things by Elizabeth Gould. Just got that kind of unbridled kind of just fascination of the world and just appreciation of everything in the world. And actually, and it makes me look at the world around me and thinking, yeah, absolutely. There's so many amazing things if we actually think about it. One of the reasons I love both of these poems. This one, a lot of it, there's a lot of it is really kind of really grounded in nature and in the natural world. Walt Whitman talks about, looking at honeybees busy around the hive in summertime, and talks about the crescent moon in spring, the birds in the sky, and it is lovely, and I personally get such a lot of pleasure and uplifting from nature. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons it's in his book here, for Poems for Happiness. So moving on, I've got another poem I'm going to share with you now. This is by another a poet from the 1800s, and it's Christina Rossetti from the Rossetti family. She's written a number of poems. Again, I've read a few of hers before today, but this one I really liked. And again, it's continuing from the miracles. It's very grounded in nature, in the sense that it's about a tree. It's actually called A Dumb Friend, and the dumb friend in this poem is the tree. This is by Christina Rossetti. I planted a young tree when I was young, but now the tree's grown and I am old. Their wintry robin shelters from the cold and tunes his silver tongue. A green and living tree I planted it, a glossy foliaged tree of evergreen. All through the noontide heat it spread a screen whereunder I might sit. But now I only watch it where it towers. I, sitting at my window, watch it toast by rattling gale or silvered by the frost, or when sweet summer flowers, wagging its round green head with stately grace, in tender winds that kiss it and go by, it shows a green full age, and what show I? A faded, wrinkled face. So often have I watched it, till mine eyes have filled with tears, and I have ceased to see that now it seems a very friend to me, in all my secrets wise, a faithful, pleasant friend, who year by year grew with my growth and strengthened with my strength, but whose green lifetime shows a longer length, when I shall not sit here. It still will bud in spring, and shed rare leaves in autumn, and in summer heat give shade, and warmth in winter, when my bed is made, in shade the cypress weaves. That's Christina Rossetti. That's A Dumb Friend, and it tells of someone planting a young tree when they were young. But of course, as the human is growing old and wrinkled and approaching death, the tree is actually grown and has matured and is now at its almost prime, isn't it? And it's going to be there for a much longer time than the human who'd planted it. That's A Dumb Friend, and the writer, she writes as seeing the tree as this friend who's looked after, who's given a shade in the summertime, and such a lot of joy as well, no doubt. That was A Dumb Friend. Now, moving on, I'm going to share with you a poem which was written by William E. Henley. Now, you may have heard of him. He's a writer. He suffered as a teenager, as a boy and as a teenager, from tuberculosis of the bone. So he really had a lot of challenges, a lot of pain, and unfortunately he had to have his left leg amputated from below the knee in his late teens. But he was determined that this wasn't going to stop him doing what he wanted to do. And he wrote this poem, which is called Invictus, which is his poem about never losing hope, no matter what the circumstances. The word Invictus comes from Latin, meaning unconquerable or undefeated. And of course it was the word that has been used for the Invictus Games, which is the sporting kind of games for ex-military. So it's about, I'd say, never losing hope. So this is Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstances, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and still find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And that's Invictus by W.E. Henley. And I am the captain of my soul was very much the go-to phrase of my grandmother when I was growing up. She had polio when she was 20 and was left in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. She did live until she was 79, and she lived a full life. She learned swimming, and she was swimming, but she got a bronze personal survival in her 60s and all sorts of things. So she achieved an awful lot, even though she was in a wheelchair from the age of 20. And as I say, she always said that she used to say she was the captain of her own ship, of her own destiny. I think it's the same as the captain of my soul in the poem by Henley. Henley's an interesting character. He was friends with George Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island. Robert Louis Stevenson, should I say? And Robert Louis Stevenson actually based one of his well-known characters on William Henley. He based Long John Silver from Treasure Island on his friend. And this is actually shown in letters that are available that are actually from Stevenson to Henley, saying just that. So we know that it's not just a suggestion, it is true, because there are letters showing that. Okay, well, I've read a number of poems from this lovely book, Poems of Happiness. I'm going to finish it off with one final poem from here. It's by James W Foley, who's from North Dakota in the States. And this poem is called A Pebble. And this poem is about, when you throw a poem in a pool, you get all those ripples kind of moving out, concentric circles going out. And he talks about a pebble in water, but then he moves on and he starts talking about if you just say something unkind, it's like unkind words can also just keep going and cause hurt. But then conversely, if you say a kind word, that can also keep going. So this is a pebble, and I think it's a lovely one to end today's poetry session. A Pebble by James W Foley. Drop a pebble in the water, just a splash and it is gone. But there's 100 ripples circling on and on and on, spreading from the centre, flowing on out to the sea, and there is no way of telling where the end is going to be. Drop a pebble in the water, in a minute you forget. But there's little waves a-flowing, and there's ripples circling yet, and those little waves a-flowing to a great big wave have grown. You've disturbed a mighty river just by dropping in a stone. Drop an unkind word, or careless, in a minute it is gone. But there's 100 ripplings circling on and on and on. They keep spreading from the centre as they go, and there is no way to stop them once you've started them to flow. Drop an unkind word, or careless, in a minute you forget, but there's little waves a-flowing and there's ripples circling yet. And perhaps in some sad heart a mighty wave of tears you've stirred, and disturbed a life was happy ere you dropped that unkind word. Drop a word of cheer and kindness, just a flash and it is gone. But there's 100 ripples circling on and on and on, bearing hope and joy and comfort on each splashing, dashing wave, till you wouldn't believe the volume of the one kind word you gave. Drop a word of cheer and kindness, in a minute you forget, but there's gladness still a-swelling, and there's joy circling yet, and you've rolled a wave of comfort whose sweet music can be heard over miles and miles of water, just by dropping one kind word. That's Pebble by James W Foley. and that was from Poems for Happiness, which is a short collection of poems, and copies of this book are in most of the libraries now across Wiltshire libraries, so do check that out, as well as the Poetry Pharmacy book. As I say, there are a number of other new poetry books. There's just a few here, I've got just kind of behind me there, available in the library, so do check that out. So yeah, and anyway, so that's finished my session for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've watched it, if you're watching this on catch up, please do still add a comment. Would love to hear your comments about what you felt about these poems, how you felt about it in terms of whether it's affected you today or whatever day you watch it. Anyway, thank you